Alistair's sort of been a bit of a fixture at the Rosemary Branch from since we first started, I would say.
This is Shakespeare. Sir, do you know anything about Anansi's story? You must know, man. If you know something about the Moors and the Black Moors and the witchcraft and thing. But anyway, I tell you, Anansi's story is an oral tradition. A travel from Africa to the West Indies and to America.
And then he first came with a show that was based on Caribbean storytelling. And I remember that he had some lovely girls who did some beautiful calypso dancing. And that just added together with the storytelling that Alistair was doing, made a fantastic show. And it particularly appealed to me because I used to be a dance teacher. I remember doing exactly the same sort of thing with all the Caribbean girls that I used to teach. And they showed me what they did at their carnivals. And between us, we used to choreograph things. And when Alistair came with his two girl dancers, it just took me back to the time when I used to teach in Dalston.
I would think the first time I probably saw Alice, because it's hard to remember, because in those days there were so few of us, that we probably met at an audition or a social party or something like that. And yeah, I immediately liked Alistair, that I know, and I've still kept friends with him for all those years, and it's well past 30 years. It's probably coming on to, I think there are 40 years now that I've known Alistair, which is quite a long time. And I've always kept in touch with him. People move around. I've never lost him for some reason. I lost him for a few years, but then you find a person again. If you like somebody, they're always there, and you find them. So I've never lost Alistair once I found him.
The first time I met Alistair was during rehearsal. He'd been brought in, this is many, many years ago now. He'd been brought to a company I used to work with, a dance company called Dance Company 7, to choreograph a Shango. And I was one of 10 dancers that were part of the company at that time. And I always remember when he first came because something happened, which I've talked about many times since, because it actually helped me towards what I actually study at the moment, because I'm supposedly doing a PhD right now, and Alistair actually contributed to that. What it was is that when we were dancing, I noticed that Alistair was kind of staring at me, and I noticed him, I thought, why is this man looking at me like this? So during the break, he called me over and he asked me where my family were from, my parents were from. So I told him that my mum's from Grenada, my dad's from Trinidad. So he asked me what my mum's maiden name was, which I told him. And then he said, much to my surprise, do you have aunts called Onika and Rita? And I said, yes. And he said, oh yeah, they used to dance in my company back in Grenada. Well, you could have knocked me down with a feather, because my mum had allowed me to believe that all these years that I was just this mad child, that all I could do was dance. I should tell people, you know, as soon as she could stand up, she's dancing. I don't know what's wrong with this child. But she never told me that actually it was something that was generational, that her sisters had danced before me and so on and so forth. So this is the first that I knew that her sisters used to dance. And it's through Alistair.
And it's because he's a sort of kind person, therefore it's very hard to lose somebody who you know is kind and helpful. I think every time I've needed something, or maybe just wanted to talk, or just express how I feel, I would speak to Alistair and somehow he not necessarily sorted it out, but make you feel calm about what the problem was.
Where's Maura?
Gone.
Do you know what that woman was up to? Look at this.
You know, Grace, sometimes we choose not to see the things that are happening right before our eyes. It's time we were honest with one another. We need to talk.
What are you going to do about that woman?
What can I do? All of us must do the best we can to follow our conscience. Maura chose one way and I another. Who is to say that I was right and she was wrong?
What was he like? Charming?
Go suck your big toe, woman. A very experienced counselor tell me if I stand up for myself, it might help me get on with my wife.
If you can't chat sense, just keep your mouth shut, Henry Pinnock.
In that case, I can't tell you who just come and gone.
Who?
I'm keeping my mouth shut.
Henry.
If you sit on my lap for 2 minutes, I might tell you.
What is he like? Well, first of all, the word is funny. I do find him creative. Very much straight to the point. Very honest.
What's charming for me about Alistair is that being a Grenadian, being of my mum's generation, he makes me feel very much at home. He says things sometimes that really reminds me of my mother. My mother passed away about 3 years ago. But even when she was alive, he gives me a connection with Grenada that nobody else, I feel, really can. Partly to do with the kind of person he is, partly to do with the fact that he is Grenadian, partly to do with the age that he is. He makes me feel very homely, and he has a way about him that very much does remind me of my mum and my aunts. Maybe because they're of a generation, I don't know. But I just love that. He really makes me feel at home when I'm talking to him, whatever we're doing. I don't feel, she's just this little English girl born in England who's trying to be Caribbean, like some people can sort of have that attitude to you. But he doesn't make me feel that way at all. He makes me feel part and parcel of my heritage. So I think for me, that perhaps is one of the things I would say I find charming about him.
I've also directed Alistair, and I found Alistair, not only does Alistair tell you how he feels about what you're doing within the character that he's playing, he'll share the information he's discovered in the character, and he will quite welcomingly tell the director, yes, could I try this? So he'll share information with you, and then you look at him and say, yeah, that's good. And that means there's a nice working relationship. He's an easygoing person to work with because he doesn't get angry. He just say, okay, I'll try this. If Alistair finds it difficult, he'll say, I'll try it, and give me time and I'll do it. So at least he will explain to you that, yes, he's having difficulty with this, but give me time and I'll look at it and I'll come with it. Whereas most actors will sort of say, this is... Alistair's not like that. It's just he'll say, well, give me 5 minutes and let me think about it. So that makes him a wonderful person to work with.
Entertaining. And always happy to share whiskey and ginger, I think, is his particular tipple.
Same again, Miss Mac.
A big grown man like you, Henry Pinnock.
What did I do?
Flaunting yourself with your girlfriend when everybody know you have a wife at home.
You got it wrong, Miss Mac. He's just a friend.
And I go next Tuesday.
Well, he's got these amazing eyes, hasn't he? And he's got a sort of very infectious energy that gets the audience going. And I remember one time there weren't very many people in the audience at something that he was doing, and whoever was there was just rocking by the end of his show.
Something that I remember more about Alistair is like when he teaches. One of the things he would do is we would do improvisation, and he might pick out 2 people, and then once those 2 people are improvising, he throws in something different that he didn't tell you about. He sends somebody else in to join you. So there's three of you and you're not knowing what that other person is going to say. So those kind of things I found, and which I use today in my teaching. When I teach young people, I do the same thing now. So it's something that I've taken from him and moved it on in the training that I do with young people. And if you're not on guard, then these are the kind of things Alistair would do, is trick you and send someone else in, and you really got to think on your feet.
Oh, well, of course I love Alistair. How could you not love Alistair?
Henry, I appreciate you taking me out,
Yes, well, it's a friendly thing to do.
Henry, I don't care that you're married, I'd love to take you home and give you a spicy cuddle.
Oh, I think that he's a sort of stalwart, isn't he? He's been going for such a long time and he has such a variety of things that he does. I think Alistair's the sort of person that everybody would respect.
I see the importance of talking to your elders about, especially the stuff that, that you're involved in. Stuff meaning theatre. Alistair's been around a long time. He has the experience. He's worked in theatre, film. I was just researching him the other day. He worked on programs like The Professionals, Dixon of Dock Green, Empire Road. When you look back at those programs that you used to watch and find that you've met someone who's been in there, in those programs, well, there's experience there that we must, as younger people, must sit down and listen to what an elder has to say about the directions you may want to go in.
All because somebody couldn't eat a little humble pie. We leave to eat a whole table full of it.
No one knows where she is, Grandad.
Don't worry, Aisha. According to your grandmother, the only reason the magazine having this lunch was so people could eat her food.
But they're not going to now.
Exactly.
Oh, you should have seen the state she was in.
Maybe she run off to Harrods and buy 20 food hamper out of her next month's salary. No pocket money this week, Aisha.
Henry.
That is if the man don't give her the sack already.
If I hear one more word out of you, you see?
You're right, as usual, dear. I wonder what the photographer coming to shoot now him don't have any food.
So what are we going to do?
Might as well clear the table. You want to start first, darling?
Seeing and knowing that he had been a cast member of the production Oscars and BBC One that ran for just a season. Also, seeing him on Doctor Who the year before last, which I managed to record for him so he could include it as part of his up-to-date showreel. Also, hearing about him on Waking the Dead and The Bill.
Well, the thing is with Alistair, he's played so many parts, and with Cleo, who also runs a theatre, I think Cleo and Alistair have been something like mother and son, husband and wife, father and daughter, brother and sister. So whenever Alistair comes, I never know which one he's going to be. He's so many things. And every time he comes with a new show, and it's always completely different from the last show. And I think it's the variety is the spice of life, and that's what Alistair means to me.
What's charming for me about Alistair is that being a Grenadian, being of my mum's generation, he makes me feel very much at home. He says things sometimes that really reminds me of my mother. My mother passed away about 3 years ago. But even when she was alive, he gives me a connection with Grenada that nobody else, I feel, really can. Partly to do with the kind of person he is, partly to do with the fact that he is Grenadian, partly to do with the age that he is. He makes me feel very homely, and he has a way about him that very much does remind me of my mum and my aunts, maybe because they're of a generation, I don't know. But I just love that. He really makes me feel at home when I'm talking to him, whatever we're doing. I don't feel, oh, she's just this little English girl born in England who's trying to be Caribbean, like some people can sort of have that attitude to you. But he doesn't make me feel that way at all. He makes me feel part and parcel of my heritage. So I think for me, that perhaps is one of the things I would say I find charming about him and his attitude.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
What's the good, the bad, and the ugly?
The good is that he just brings lovely vibes everywhere he goes. That's the good.
Alistair is a very good man, kind, listens, he inspires you.
Well, what's good, it's easier to think about first, is that Alistair is not frightened to support. He is happy to help. He's happy to put people in contact with each other, help you to network. He's happy to involve you in whatever he's doing, because unfortunately too many people are scared because they're worried that perhaps you might succeed more than they do, that sort of attitude. But Alistair isn't like that. He is happy to involve you in things.
In terms of bad, I can't. There's no words that I can say bad about Alistair.
If he was to be a fruit, I think he'd be a pawpaw. He always loves a big hug.
I would definitely say a mango. Sweet, right texture on the outside and sweet on the inside.
I'll maybe say apple. Crisp when he's ready. Crisp knowledge of theatre.
See, I would think of guava for some reason, because guava really makes me think of Grenada. And I find guava very sort of flavoursome. And I think that could describe Alistair, to be honest.
Alistair's unique side is that he's not a yes man. It's difficult in this industry when you're a black playwright trying to get your material on the stage, and when you want to get funding from the Arts Council, if they don't know the play, know the writer, they're not willing to, fund those kind of things. And if that be the case, Alistair would try a different way of trying to get his work on.
I've never seen him win an award, but I've actually spoken to other actors who actually know of him, and I've worked with him, and they've had great things to say about him.
Well, Alistair, I don't believe that you've been really recognised for the work that you do. And it's time that is sorted out and that is done. You've done a fantastic job. You have worked with so many people. I mean, I know I've been amazed to hear that you worked with Beja and Dorothy Dandridge and all of these people. It's amazing what you've done. Don't ever be discouraged. You have a place in history.
Because he's a great man. He's been there, performing for years, and like I always have to go back to his knowledge of theatre, directing, writing as well. He's done some good things, so that all goes on the side of good.
I think he's a very generous performer. Very generous performer. And the other thing is that Alistair will perform for an audience. There are quite a lot of people who think that forget the audience because it's all about them. But Alistair's always very conscious and he communicates beautifully with an audience.